everyone, I'm Fools, and I'm here to share a bit about myself and the channel. But if you prefer to get straight into the art, you can go to this timestamp in the video. And with that out of the way, we can get back into it. Like I said, I'm Fools, co-host of Blank Walks. A bit about myself, I'm a self-taught digital and traditional artist who's been doing art for the last 5 years. And if you happen to recognize my style, you might remember me from some of Tomb's thumbnails, Lavin from Artbyte, or some random commissions following on the internet. Which is why I felt comfortable to start this channel in the first place. Something fun and mutually beneficial for me and you the viewer. On this channel we'll be doing speed paints like later on in this video, as well as tutorials and art challenges. I also plan on working with new softwares and programs I have absolutely no experience in, such as different art apps, animation, and Blender. Hopefully watching my adventures with these programs and any mistakes I might make along the way will hopefully help you avoid making similar ones, or at least make you feel better if you do. Just as I'm happy to make tutorials and give advice to any possible viewers, I'm hoping you all feel free to do the same. I'd love to improve and get advice from fellow artists, in a respectful way, of course. I'm hoping with a lot of us we can all learn something new from each other and improve. This channel is for beginner, professional artists, and everyone in between. Even those of us who might not do art ourselves, but enjoy it nonetheless. Welcome to the channel. And with that out of the way, we can move on to the channel's first speed paint. And some of y'all's first real look at my art style, and the one you'll hopefully be seeing more of in the future. Rather than just narrating, which you're already seeing on the screen, I decided to give you some background about the art itself, as well as some techniques I've used and how to do them yourself. For those of you who aren't coming from Tomb's channel, these are the Gravekeepers, also known as Tomb Nolast's mods on various platforms. Starting off to the very left, we have Wallace. Their persona in just typical art of them is normally depicted as a crow, but for continuity's sake, I took a page out of Nox's book, instead drawing them as a plague doctor. I tried to make each mod stand out both in their color scheme and their design itself, which is why you'll see why they have such drastically different color palettes. For Wallace, we have a pretty neutral color palette of a plague doctor. I try to stick pretty close to Nox's original color palette and design, with a few tweaks here and there, such as the brown you'll see I've added into Wallace's design to break up some of those blacks and grays. True to Wallace's original profile picture, I added an ace patch onto their cloak, as well as some garlic. You get it? You get the joke? Okay, good. Even with the added shades of brown, they were still kind of fading into the background a little too much for me, so I also give them a lantern, which also gave the art itself a secondary light source other than just the moon. As you can see, I'm primarily using cell shading, which means I'm using harsher, straighter lines for my lighting and shading, as opposed to using a softer brush or the blender tool. It's a pretty similar technique used in cartoons and animes. It's pretty easy and quick to use if you already have a light source established in your drawing. To achieve this lighting look in Iris Paint, simply go to Normal, then Contrast, and scroll down until you see the Overlay option. For Wallace, I wanted a higher contrast, so I used white at full opacity, but feel free to experiment with other lighting colors and different opacities. I used a pretty similar technique for shading, swapping out white for purple and overlay with Multiply. And pretty standard tip, you're going to try to put your shadows on the opposite side of wherever your light source is hitting. And with that, we get to move on to the incredible artist whose designs I've been referencing this whole time, also known as Bluenox. Unlike Wallace's, Nox's design is pretty straightforward, which is why I tried to deviate from the original design as little as possible. Just picking an eye color and giving them slightly pointed ears, which I thought fitted their original design and personality, and is a subtle way to further set the mods' designs apart from each other. Speaking of Nox's design, Nox has the most vibrant and high contrast color palette, as well as being in the center of the canvas, is why their design might stick out so much more from the other mods. Side note, this was completely unintentional, but another reason why color palette and composition is so important when playing your drawing, which is something we'll go over in a later video. Since Nox has a slightly purplish white skin tone, I, of course, went with a purple blush. A tip I typically use when designing on a character's blush color is color picking the base skin tone, clicking on Multiply, and dragging the opacity to about 40%. That way the blush isn't too striking but also matches with the character's original skin tone, which is really helpful for characters with inhuman or darker skin tones. Since Nox is our first mod with hair showing, I use the blending brush and Multiply tool to make it look a bit more natural, or as natural as my art style gets. I kept their dress the exact same from the original design. I drew every heart individually so it flowed with fabric, but if anyone knows a better way to achieve the same look in less time, please feel free to let me know. And I do mean please, this took a while. I had to draw every single heart. And lastly, we move on to their shoes. Nox's feet weren't showing in the original design, so I had to take a few creative liberties. And ultimately decided on some neon pink rain boots, though I thought it fit the character design pretty well. And last but not least, we have Pink Rose Kitty, better known as Rose. But before we get to her design, I'm going to highly recommend her channel to you all. Rose is funny, sweet, and started her channel just a few months before I did. Despite this, she's managed to pump out several high-quality gameplay videos, from everything from Stardew to Genshin Impact. So if you're looking for a relaxing gameplay video to watch, or listen to, I have to recommend Rose. And if you do want to check out Horror and Tomb's channels are linked in the description down below. Now back to the art. Rose's design has no changes whatsoever since I have multiple pictures of her avatar to base it off of. Despite the big hair, Rose's color palette is kind of an in-between point between Wallace and Nox. She definitely has color in her design, but it's more warm and desaturated. Also, Rose is our only model with a human skin tone, yet I was still able to use the multiply method to find a blush that matched. Rose's hair was a bit more tricky to draw than Nox's, as I'm more used to drawing curly hairstyles. But I tried my best and I think it came out pretty well. For the glass on her goggles, I didn't want to just use a straight white or blue, so I took shades of pink and purple from her design and blended them into the glass to give it a more reflective look. Similar to Wallace's Crow and Rose's Ghost Cat, and I just realized I messed up, I planned on giving every mod an animal to interact with, and somehow forgot about Nox. So, we're gonna pretend those leaves are butterflies, okay? Perfect. Like I was saying, every mod was given an animal that I thought represented them, as well as the whole graveyard vibe in general. I was originally just going to make the cat black, but thought it was a bit too similar to Wallace's Crow, and more importantly got lost in the dark forefront of the drawing. So I instead went with the ghost cat, who died after a very long and fulfilling life. Just trust me on this, okay? And to break up some of the dark colors, I went with a teal instead of a white for the cat, and gave Wallace's Crow white and glowing eyes. And those of you who might have played Slay the Princess might recognize this crow and the cabin in the background of the drawing, which is another really popular game Toon plays on her channel, along with being my personal favorite, which is actually how I started watching her in the first place. And as we get to the end of the video, I get to talk about my biggest regret and personal mistake of this drawing, the plants. I typically don't draw full-out backgrounds, especially ones with this much detail, and sad to say, with this many plants, it was a very boring and tedious process. I would recommend to none of my viewers. Though I did enjoy drawing the flowers and the moss. I tried to use different shades of green for everything so you could distinguish one plant from the other. And finally, we get to the tombstones, each of which has the name of one of Tomb's viewers on them, who are very active in the community. And there you have it, our first video on the process we have the speed paint. I'd love to hear from you all in the comments. Whether you have questions about the techniques I used, tips and tricks of your own you'd like to share, video ideas you'd like to see from me, or just want to stop by and say hi. I'm always excited to connect with fellow artists and art enthusiasts. This channel is as much about building community as it is about creating art, so don't hesitate to join the conversation. Thank you for watching, and I can't wait to share more projects, experiments, and creative journeys with you soon. See you next time!